In September 2025, a quiet corner of the Himalayas exploded. In Leh, the main town of Ladakh, crowds set fire to the local office of the governing party. By the end of the day, according to reporting by Al Jazeera, at least 4 protesters were dead. At the center of it all stood an unlikely figure, Sonam Wangchuk, a soft-spoken engineer and education reformer, the real-life inspiration behind a beloved Bollywood film, who had been on a hunger strike for his region's rights. And then, within days, something revealing happened. The government detained him and canceled his charity's foreign funding license. And the national conversation stopped being about Ladakh and became about his money. 2 words did that. 2 of the most powerful words in modern politics: foreign funded. This is politics in everything. And a quick, honest note up front. This video takes no side on the man. It is about the accusation. So, first, who is Sonam Wangchuk? For decades, he has been about as far from a villain as you can get. An engineer who reinvented schooling for the children of Ladakh. The inventor of the ice stupa, an artificial glacier that stores winter water for dry mountain farms. A man so admired that a character inspired by him anchored one of the most loved films in Indian history. His cause was equally specific. In 2019, Ladakh was carved out as a union territory governed directly from Delhi, with no legislature of its own. Wangchuk led a peaceful campaign for what many locals wanted: full statehood and protection under the 6th schedule of the Constitution, a provision meant to safeguard indigenous land, culture, and jobs. For years, this looked like marches, fasts, and appeals, a cause about rights. But peaceful movements that feel unheard do not always stay peaceful. By September 2025, years of frustration had built to breaking point. In Leh, a younger, angrier generation poured into the streets. The regional office of the Prime Minister's party was torched. And, as reported by Al Jazeera, at least 4 protesters were killed and dozens injured in the chaos. In an instant, a movement that had prided itself on nonviolence was tangled up with fire and death. And the single most important question in all of politics arrived: who is to blame? The answer a government chooses to that question tells you almost everything. The government moved quickly and on 2 fronts at once. First, India's Home Ministry accused Wangchuk of inciting the crowds with his speeches and detained him under the National Security Act, a law that allows the state to hold someone without trial as a preventive measure. Second, it revoked the foreign funding license of his organization, the Students' Educational and Cultural Movement of Ladakh, known as SECML, citing alleged violations. Hold on to that combination because it is the whole story in miniature. The activist is locked up and the money is switched off in the very same breath. Roughly 6 months later, the government would quietly revoke that detention and Wangchuk would walk free. But by then, the framing had already done its work. Because alongside the arrest came the accusation. Senior ministers, including Kiren Rijiju and Rajeev Chandrasekhar, publicly suggested a foreign hand behind the unrest. There were insinuations of links to the billionaire George Soros, to Pakistan, and the description of a cross-border influence operation aimed at destabilizing India. Now, 2 things must be said clearly and fairly. 1, in these public statements, no detailed evidence was actually presented for those specific claims. And 2, Wangchuk and his supporters flatly denied all of it, insisting the movement took no money from any party or foreign power, that it was, in their words, funded by nothing, sustained by crowdsourced meals and water. This video cannot referee that dispute, but we do not need to in order to see the move itself. And it is a kind of magic trick. Watch what the phrase foreign funded actually does. A moment ago, the country was debating a hard question. Does Ladakh deserve statehood and constitutional protection? The instant those 2 words appear, that question quietly vanishes. Now the country is debating something completely different. Is this man a foreign agent? The subject has been switched from the cause to the cash, from the argument to the accuser's motives. And the beauty of it, for whoever wields it, is that the accusation barely needs proof to work. Just raising it is enough to poison the well. This is not unique to India. or to any one party. Governments all over the world reach for it because it performs a small miracle. It turns a political opponent into a national security threat. But this is more than rhetoric, because there is a law that turns the accusation into a lever you can actually pull. It is called the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, or FCRA. In simple terms, it controls whether any Indian charity is allowed to receive money from outside the country. And here is the crucial part. The government decides who keeps that license and who loses it. Cancel it, and an organization's foreign funding stops overnight. No long trial required. It is, quite literally, a switch, and the state's hand is on it. Sekmal's switch was flipped within days. So the phrase and the law work together. The words change the subject, and the law cuts the money. And this is where Sonam Wangchuk stops being a lone story and becomes part of a much larger pattern. Because that switch has been flipped again and again on a staggering scale. By the government's own figures, reported by outlets like the Tribune, the FCRA licenses of more than 16,000 NGOs were canceled between 2015 and 2024. One deep investigation by the Caravan magazine puts the number, across the wider period, at closer to 22,000. And when you look at the most prominent names on that list, a striking theme appears. Amnesty International, Greenpeace, Oxfam India, the Center for Policy Research. Many of the hardest hit have one thing in common. They do work that scrutinizes or embarrasses those in power. Now, in fairness, and this matters, the government's stated reason is not sinister on its face. Officials say the FCRA is about transparency, about keeping foreign money out of Indian politics and making sure charities are accountable. And you know what? That is a genuinely legitimate concern. Foreign powers really do try to influence other countries through money, media, and NGOs. A state does have a real duty to know who is funding what within its borders. The problem was never that the question gets asked. The problem is who gets asked it and who never does. When the same law lands over and over on the government's critics, while barely touching groups friendly to power, transparency starts to look less like a principle and more like a targeting system. It is worth noting that India's own Supreme Court has held that NGOs with no ties to party politics are entitled to receive foreign funds. So, the question you actually came here for, was Sonam Wangchuk foreign-funded propaganda, or a genuine voice for his people, silenced by a convenient label? And here is the honest answer, the one this channel will always give you. From the outside, we cannot know, and anyone who tells you it is obvious in either direction is selling you something. But what we can see perfectly clearly is the machine. A cause becomes a person. A person becomes their funding. Funding becomes a foreign hand. And a foreign hand becomes a reason to simply stop listening. That is why foreign funded is so powerful. It lets an entire society skip the harder question underneath. In this case, what does Ladakh actually want, and why are so many of its people so angry? So the next time you hear those two words aimed at anyone, do not ask, first, is it true? Ask, who is aiming this, at whom, and what conversation does it conveniently end? A cause, a label, and a switch on the wall. Everything is political, especially the question of who we are allowed to call an outsider. This is politics in everything. If this gave you a sharper way to read the news, subscribe and tell us in the comments, what should the rule be for foreign funding of charities? Next time, a new arena, same game.